Another weekend in the books, as week 2 might have been even better than week 1. There were upsets, a lot of fantastic games, and some memorable performances. With the second weekend already over, it's time to share my top 25 teams as we get ready to enter week 3 of the college football season. Staying at number 1 is Georgia as they took down Ball State 45-3. For the second consecutive week, Georgia played nobody and they had a very easy win. Michigan stays at number 2 after their pretty easy 35-7 win over UNLV. JJ McCarthy was nearly perfect as he completed 22 of 25 passes for just under 300 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, on the ground, Blake Corum led the team with 80 rushing yards and rushed in 3 touchdowns as well. After last week's crazy game, Florida State had an easy one as they took down Southern Miss 66-13. Jordan Travis only threw for 175 yards with 2 touchdowns, but that's all he needed to do. Moving all the way up to number 4 is the Texas Longhorns. They went on the road and knocked off number 3 Alabama 34-24. I went more in depth on this game in a video from last night, so if you haven't done so, make sure you guys go check out that video. But I believe Quinn Ewers is the real deal, and so is this Texas team. This game was pretty much over at the end of the first quarter as USC won 56-10 over Stanford. They led 49-3 at the end of the first half, and it was one of the more lopsided first halves in the history of the Pac-12. Caleb Williams was fantastic once again as he completed 19-21 passes for 280 yards and 3 passing touchdowns. He also had a run for 20 yards that resulted in a touchdown as well. Ohio State also had a pretty easy contest as they took down the Youngstown State Penguins. They won 35-7, largely due to Marvin Harrison Jr. He caught 7 passes for 160 yards with 2 receiving touchdowns. Kyle McCord saw majority of the snaps in this one as he threw for over 250 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Devin Brown saw significant action as he completed 7 passes for over 100 yards. If you're noticing a trend of a lot of easy victories, well, that's because there are a lot. Washington took down Tulsa 43-10. Michael Penix Jr. continues to add to his Heisman campaign as he threw for over 400 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Penn State defeated Delaware 63-7, but this game was actually only 1 score entering the second quarter. The Nittany Lions then completely took off, and this game became a blowout. Katron Allen rushed for over 100 yards with a rushing score, while Nicholas Singleton rushed in 3 scores on the ground. This was one of the more exciting games of the entire night as Oregon knocked off Texas Tech 38-30. It was a back and forth game as both teams kept exchanging leads, especially in the fourth quarter. Bo Nix threw for over 350 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. I honestly thought Texas Tech was going to pull off the upset, but Bo Nix delivered magic in the fourth quarter and helped give Oregon this impressive victory. Speaking of a near upset, Utah managed to escape Baylor with a victory. They were trailing late in the fourth quarter by a touchdown, but they were able to tie things up. Then, after an interception, they were able to score the go-ahead touchdown with under a minute remaining. The Utes were still without Cameron Rising, so they relied on Nate Johnson and Bryson Barnes, who combined didn't really have a great day at all. Utah's 2-0 on the season, and they desperately need Rising to return if they have any chance of playing in the Pac-12 title this year. This is where I have Alabama falling all the way down to. They lost at home to Texas by 10 points. It's their first loss at home to a non-conference opponent since 2007, so we rarely see Alabama losses like this. Jalen Milroe had an okay game overall, but I was a little disappointed by the way he played. As I talked about in last night's video, I think Alabama's still going to be good this season, but I don't think they're going to be a top 5 team. They might not even be a top 10 team this year. Eventually, after all the weather delays, Notre Dame knocked off NC State 45-24. NC State was kind of hanging around as we entered the fourth quarter, but Notre Dame outscored them 21-7 to really put this one away. Sam Hartman had another fantastic game for the Irish, throwing for 300 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, on the ground, Audric Estime rushed for over 130 yards, averaging 10 yards a carry with 2 rushing scores. This game was a little too close for comfort for Tennessee as they were tied at the end of the first quarter and led by only 7 going into the second half against Austin Peay. But they managed to pull away in the second half, still only winning by 17 points. Joe Milton threw for 230 yards with 2 passing touchdowns, while Jalen Wright and Jabari Small combined to rush for over 2 200 yards. Oregon State had no problem in this one as they took down UC Davis 55-7. DJ Uiagalelei had a quiet night as he completed only 8 passes, throwing for 100 yards with 2 passing touchdowns, but that's all he needed to do. As a team, the Beavers rushed for 270 yards and had 3 rushing scores. Colorado continues to impress as they knocked off Nebraska 36-14. Shedeur Sanders is a legit Heisman candidate as he threw for 400 yards with 2 passing touchdowns while rushing in a score as well. Meanwhile, he has a plethora of receivers in Xavier Weaver, Travis Hunter, and Jimmy Horn Jr., all of which had fantastic performances. Also, the defense really stepped up as they made Nebraska look like a D3 school in this game. Before we get to the rest of my rankings, I'd like to share with you guys how you can win money during the college football season. I've partnered with Underdog Fantasy to bring you this amazing deal. If you download the Underdog app and use promo code Harris, they'll match your first deposit up to $100. Last night, I did a 4-player entry for $100 that hit, so I turned that into $1,000. You can do the exact same with Underdog Fantasy. They also have this exclusive offer if you sign up today. Saquon Barkley's higher lower for total yards in tonight's game is currently set at 0.5 yards, meaning if he gets just 1 total yard, you win. Make the college football season even more exciting and turn it into money with Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code Harris for a 100% deposit match up to $100. You can also sign up using the link in my description as well. This one was a little close at the end of the first quarter and the first half, but Kansas State pulled away and knocked off Troy 42-13. Will Howard was great as he threw for 250 yards with 3 passing touchdowns while adding 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. After winning the Big 12 last season, Kansas State hasn't missed a beat in 2023. This game was expected to be a shootout as the over-under was set at 70 points. It was only halfway there, but entering the fourth quarter, this was only a 14-3 game. But Oklahoma scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and they ended up knocking off SMU by 17 points. Dillon Gabriel threw for only 175 yards, but he did have 4 passing touchdowns. Through the first 3 quarters of this game, it honestly looked like Tulane was going to knock off Ole Miss. The Green Wave led at the end of the first half, and this game was tied entering the fourth quarter. But Ole Miss outscored them 20-3 in the fourth quarter and picked up the pretty easy 17-point victory. Jackson Dart threw for just under 300 yards with 2 passing touchdowns and also added 40 yards on the ground as well. After last week's thrilling win over Clemson, Duke had a pretty easy game as they took down Lafayette 42-7. Riley Leonard was perfect as he completed all 12 of his passes for 140 yards with a passing touchdown. Meanwhile on the ground, Jordan Waters rushed for over 100 yards with 2 scores, and Jaquez Moore added 70 yards with a rushing score as well. UCLA took down San Diego State 35-10. It looks like the Bruins listened to me after last week's performance and gave the starting job to Dante Moore. He looked fantastic as he threw for 300 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile on the ground, TJ Harden rushed for 90 yards with a rushing score, and Carson Steele also rushed for 90 yards with a rushing score as well. This one was a true beatdown as LSU took down Grambling 72-10. This game was actually pretty close at the end of the first quarter as LSU led 14-10, but they managed to outscore Grambling 58-0 the rest of the way. Jaden Daniels had himself quite the day as he threw for just under 300 yards with 5 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile on the ground, LSU rushed for over 300 yards as a team and had 5 rushing scores. They were led by Logan Diggs, who rushed for over 100 yards, and Caleb Jackson had 2 rushing scores to go along with 60 yards. I know I talked about Texas being back, but maybe Miami is back, because what a showing they had against number 23 Texas A&M. They took down the Aggies 48-33. Last week I talked about Tyler Van Dyke and how I thought he wouldn't throw more than 2 touchdown passes. Well, he proved me wrong by having arguably one of the best games of his entire career. He threw for 375 yards with 5 passing touchdowns and no interceptions. He had himself a career day as this Miami offense looks like they could be a potential problem. Also, LMAO at Jimbo Fisher. Washington State pulled off the upset as they knocked off number 19 Wisconsin at home. When I talked about my most anticipated games of this weekend, I said Wisconsin should be on upset watch, and they were. Cameron Ward threw for 200 yards and 2 passing touchdowns, and once again, Washington State looks like they're going to be a solid team in the Pac-12 in 2023. I don't know how North Carolina managed to win this game, but they somehow pulled it off as they defeated Appalachian State 40-34 in overtime. It wasn't a great game by North Carolina, as honestly, if you watch this one, App State looked like the better team for majority of this game. Drake May didn't look great as he threw for only 200 yards and didn't have a single passing touchdown. The reason North Carolina was able to hang around in this game was largely due to running back Omarion Hampton. He led the team with 235 yards on the ground and had 3 rushing touchdowns. Had it not been for him, Appalachian State would have pulled off the big upset in this one. We'll wrap up today's top 25 with Iowa as they won a thriller over Iowa State. It looked like the Cyclones were going to rally late, but Iowa's defense, surprise surprise, stepped up when it mattered most. Cade McNamara threw for only 120 yards and didn't have a single touchdown, but when you have a defense like this, you don't really need to have a great offensive performance. I mean, overall for the game, Iowa had only 9 first downs and 235 yards of total offense, but that's all it takes to win a game for them. Well, there's my top 25 after week 2. Was there a team I had ranked too high or ranked too low? Or was there a team that didn't crack my top 25 at all that should have been in here? Whoever it is, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.